day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to our webinar on suicide, presented by Student Counselling and Development. My name is Bianca Britt, and I'm a registered counsellor from Vaal campus.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Donald Mulema, social worker under Student Counselling and Development at Mafikeng site of delivery.
Hello students, I'm Karen Pretorius, a registered counselling psychologist, and I'm based at the Potchefstroom campus. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. I think it is so valuable that we have the opportunity to talk about suicide. It's a topic that most of the times we are hesitant to talk about, but it's important that we do. So the different things that we will be covering today with regards to suicide is the definition and the overview of suicide, the looking at the symptoms and the precipitating factors, discussing the warning signs and the risk factors, and then talking a bit about that myths and that misconceptions that people have about suicide. Then we will quickly discuss the do's and the don'ts. So what do we do? How can we assist the loved ones and the people around us when we do become aware that there's a suicide risk? And then, very important, where do we refer these students that have suicidal thoughts, or where do you go when you feel as if this is something that you need to talk about? So the definition and overview of suicide, it's important that we know what it is and what it entails, but it's a very, very wide topic. And it's also a topic that's very stigmatized. It's as if people are scared, and it's as if the word is scary to talk about. I hope that when we do have the opportunity to talk about it a bit more, that it becomes destigmatized and that we don't feel scared or worried that it's something that we cannot talk about, but that we rather do reach out to the people around us, and that we know that there's people at the universities that can help and assist us. When people hear the word suicide, it's accompanied with a whole lot of different emotions. Usually it's like I said, being scared or anxious, also being very emotional because maybe you have lost a loved one to suicide, or it's reminding you of a time in your life when you had the thoughts of ending your own life. Most people have been affected by suicide, either directly having the thoughts or having the ideation of wanting to end their own lives, or they lost someone that they cared about due to suicide. It's important that we know what the definitions are of suicide. It's not the same as self-harming. The intent of suicide is to end one's life. When with self-harming, it's not to end one's own life, it's for a different reason. Suicide is when someone dies due to injury or harm caused by themselves, and it's with the intention of wanting to end their own life and having ended their own lives. A suicide attempt is when someone attempts to end their own life or harming or injuring themselves, but they do not die as a result thereof. And suicide ideation is when one fosters the thoughts and the feelings of wanting to go over into committing suicide or ending their own life. When an individual contemplates ending their own life or make plans to do so. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death worldwide, and it can affect anyone at any time, like I said, either directly or indirectly. About a third of suicides occur between the ages of 20 to 39 years old, and that really puts students at a risk, at an age risk of where they are confronted by suicide and maybe the wanting to end their own lives, or by losing friends, the people that you sit with in class due to suicide. People sometimes struggle to get the mental health treatment that they need due to various reasons, and that's why it's so important that we do have this opportunity so that you don't feel that you are alone or feel as if you are isolated when it comes to suicide. Thank you. I'm going to give over to Bianca now.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So as Karen mentioned, we tend to shy away from discussing topics such as suicide, although they are very important. When we do not discuss these topics, we tend to be uninformed and make common myths as facts. So here are some of the most common misconceptions we hear so many times regarding suicide, which are usually, in most cases, false. So the first false myth is that people who talk about suicide won't really do it. It's like they are just seeking attention, because if they wanted to, they wouldn't talk about it. But in most cases, a person who commits or attempts suicide has given some clue or warning. Do not ignore suicide threats. Statements like, "You will be sorry when I'm dead," "I can't see any way out," or even, "I could just die and make it all stop." No matter how casually or jokingly said, it may indicate serious suicidal feelings. And even if it is attention-seeking behavior, it is serious attention-seeking behavior, which indicates a cry for help and should never be ignored or brushed off. Second, anyone who tries to kill themselves must be crazy. This is false, as most suicide people are not psychotic or insane. They might be upset, grief-stricken, depressive, or despairing, but extreme distress and emotional pain are not necessarily signs of mental illness. Another false belief is that if a person is determined to kill themselves, nothing is going to stop them. Even the most severe depressed person has mixed feelings about death, wavering until the very last moment between wanting to live and wanting to die. Most suicidal people do not want death. They want the pain to stop. The impulse to end it all, however overpowering, won't last forever. People who commit suicide are people who are unwilling to seek help. This is false, as studies of suicide victims have shown that more than half had sought professional help in the 6 months prior to their deaths. That person might have just reached a point where they felt like no one will be able to assist them, or the situation has just gotten so severe that they felt that they hadn't had time to work towards recovery. The feeling that these feelings are going to last forever is so overwhelming. It is important to realize that therapy or seeking professional help is no quick fix. It takes some time to see improvements. And finally, the most commonly false belief is that talking about suicide might give someone the idea. You don't give a suicidal person morbid ideas by talking to them about suicide. The opposite is true. Bringing up the subject of suicide and discussing it openly is one of the most helpful things you can do, as it shows the person you are willing to listen without any judgment. In most cases, a suicidal person who doesn't decide to speak out in one way or another will not do so due to the fear of being judged for their feelings. So being open about the subject might help more than we realize, even if it can feel scary sometimes. But if you don't feel up for it, find someone that you can help, or someone that can help you, who you trust, or even a counselor. So next up, I'm going to give over to Donald with some signs and symptoms.
Thank you very much, Bianca. Taking a closer look into the warning signs and symptoms of suicide. Suicidal warning signs should be taken very seriously. There are some signs that are obvious, such as talking about suicide and dying, but others are much more subtle and can be easily missed. So it is important to know the signs, especially for those who have the risk factors of suicide. In life, you cannot see what a person is feeling on the inside. So it is not always easy to identify when someone is suicidal or having suicidal thoughts. To be honest, early detection of warning signs can lead to professional help and mental health treatment and can even save a life. The following are the signs that a person may be contemplating suicide. Include the following: talking about feeling hopeless or feeling trapped or feeling alone. It is that moment when an individual would feel very desperate where an individual would feel very sad and they would find themselves living in their own little cocoon. Sometimes they end up saying that they have no reason to go on living, having the feeling that you are a failure, having a feeling that there is nothing that you do that works out for you. It can be a situation whereby you have failed a test. It can be a situation whereby you are having family problems or even financial crisis at home, failing to pay for your studies. That would end up to a point whereby you are feeling that there is no point of living. Another sign that we can look into, it's a sign of making a will or giving away your personal possessions as part of preparation for what's taking over your life. When I'm talking about personal possessions, I am referring to a point whereby you are giving away your clothes, you are giving away your gadgets. Another point that we can take into consideration is searching for a means of doing personal harm, such as buying a gun, or such as buying instruments that are very harmful. Instruments such as razor blades, dangerous chemicals, of which these are the signs that one can take into consideration. Another sign that we can look into is sleeping too much or too little. Also struggling to study or write your exams. It is a point whereby an individual would find themselves worrying too much and also having a sudden of thoughts into their minds. Experiencing eating too much or eating too little, which is a point whereby a person would result into gaining weight or having a drastic weight loss. These are the signs that we also need to take into consideration when we are looking at the warning signs. Another warning sign that we can look into is engaging in reckless behaviors, which include excessive alcohol or drug consumption. There are those individuals, whenever they are faced with challenges, whenever they feel like they want to take their life, they wouldn't care about what life holds. They wouldn't care what is ahead of them. Then they would result into reckless behaviors. Avoiding social interaction with others, which leads to social withdrawal. Failing to make friends, failing to engage with your subordinates. These are some of the signs. And one would end up locking themselves up in their own rooms and failing to face the world. Experiencing range of interactions to seek revenge. One would feel that they want to revenge or express a rage, which is violent behavior, and also showing signs of extreme anxiousness or agitation. Suddenness of calmness. One would experience a feeling of feeling calm all of a sudden, which would raise an eyebrow to people to say that this individual was feeling depressed, was feeling down, but all of a sudden the person is calm and they would say that they are now fine, which is some of the signs to say this behavior is not normal. There is something wrong with this particular individual. And last but not least, talking about suicide as a way out. This is some of the things that our people go through as the signs that will lead us that this particular individual's life is in danger and they really want to take over their lives. As I take over to one of my colleagues, Karen, to do the do's and the don'ts.
Thank you, Donald. I think before that, Bianca is just going to tell us a bit more about the risk factors.
Thank you, guys. So accompanying the warning signs are the common risk factors for suicide. So according to the US Department of Health and Human Services, at least 90% of all people who commit suicide suffer from one or more mental disorders, such as depression, bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia. Depression in particular plays a very large role in suicide. The difficulty suicidal people have imagining a solution to their suffering is due in part to the distorted thinking caused by depression. However, mental illness is not the only factor associated with suicide. There are many other considerations, which include, among others, alcoholism or drug abuse, previous suicide attempts, terminal illness or chronic pain, social isolation or loneliness, a history of trauma or abuse, or a recent traumatic experience such as rape, assault, or mugging. A recent loss, either of a loved one, a job, an income or livelihood, a relationship, or even a pet. Experiencing major disappointment, failing exams, or missed job opportunities. Changes in life circumstances, adjustment to university, parental divorce, or changes in friendship circles might have a big impact in our lives. Suicide of a family member, friend, or significant other may trigger our own suicidal thoughts or ideation. And finally, financial or legal problems. These are all factors that put a person at risk for either attempting suicide or committing suicide. These factors all have different effects from one person to the next. What might seem like something small to you might be a very big mountain to cross for another. It is important not to judge one another on the situation in one's lives, but rather be supportive no matter what the situation holds. Taking these risk factors in consideration alongside the most common warning signs and symptoms could help you to further evaluate the situation. But next up, and don'ts when you do decide to enter into a situation where it requires us to assist someone. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Bianca. Yeah, it's very important that Bianca mentioned that we need to be supportive when we do become aware of the person around us, either a friend or a family member that do have suicidal ideation or does think about ending their own lives from time to time. The way in which we can support them is by being there and just being the person that listens to them and to be present and empathic. But there's also a few things that we need to stay away from or steer clear from in the way that we do speak to people. And when they do open up to us, we need to know that it's a very, very respectful way in which we need to talk to them and engage in a conversation in this regard. So here's a few things that we can do and things that we should not do when we engage in communication with a person that has opened up to us with regards to their own suicidal ideation. So the first thing that we do sometimes want to say to people when they are very emotional, either very anxious or very emotional crying or maybe even expressing their emotions in a different way, we want to tell them to calm down. Calm down isn't necessarily a good idea at that moment to tell that person. It may feel to them as if you judge their behavior. What we can rather say is to say that I can see that you are feeling very anxious or that you are feeling very depressed. Let's take deep breaths together. Rather to confirm that what they are feeling is relevant and you are not taking away from the way that which they are expressing their own emotions or the way that they are feeling and the emotions that they are experiencing. So rather to reflect on the emotion that you can see that they are experiencing at that moment. Rather not say that everything will be okay, because the truth is, and the harsh reality is that we don't know that everything will be okay. It's a promise that we do want to make, but that we can't, because none of us has the power or has the ability to know that everything will be okay. And at that moment, for that person, it really feels as if it's not going to be okay ever again. People want, in a very emotional situation like that, they do want the reassurance. If someone is very anxious or they are very depressed, they want someone to tell them that it will be okay or that it's not that bad. But that only worsens the emotion that they are feeling at that moment. And it creates a rift between you and the person that you are communicating with. So rather stay away from reassurance and telling them that everything will be okay or don't worry about it. to reflect on the emotion that they are experiencing, to tell them that I can see that you are very anxious, or I can see that you are very, very sad at that moment. Another thing that we should also stop or steer clear from saying is to tell them to stop worrying or stressing, or stop feeling so sad or depressed. The unsuccessful attempts to stop the anxiety thoughts sometimes causes more anxiety than the content in itself. So the fact that if someone is very anxious and that led up to them at that moment feeling very sad and very low and wanting to exacerbate the emotions in total that they are experiencing, they have tried everything else. So they have tried to stop worrying or stressing, and they have tried to stop feeling sad. It won't necessarily help at that moment to hear it from someone else. Rather, reflect once again on the fact that they have tried and that it's difficult for them to lessen the emotion. For example, I can see that it is difficult for you to worry less, or I can see that it is very difficult for you to feel less sad at this moment. Another thing that won't necessarily help is to tell them that just forget about it. Something that we can rather tell them is, would you like to talk about what you are feeling? To tell someone that they should forget about the emotion that they're experiencing is, to a certain extent, telling them that you are not necessarily being the emotion as that important or valid. But giving them the platform and the opportunity to talk about it gives them the idea that what they are experiencing is valid and that you are there for them. To say that it's not that serious, to them it really feels very serious at that moment. So rather to say, we will assist you as best we can in this moment. And I can see that it feels very serious to you now. And that is why I am here, and I will help you as best as I can. To tell them or to reiterate the fact that everything is bad, trying to tell them that you also feel as if everything is bad and everything is sad at times. Rather to stay where they are at and reflect once again. I hear that it feels like a dark cloud. Do you think there could possibly be a silver lining somewhere? A few other things that we can also take into account. Don't ever make any promises, because you don't know if you will ever be able to fulfill all of the promises that you do make. Rather tell them that in this moment, I am here and I will assist you as best I can. The other thing that we also tend to want to explain to someone is that I will always be here for you when they open up about their suicidal ideation. But once again, the reality is you won't necessarily always be there. And you do not want to make false promises in a moment where you feel as if you will be able to fulfill it. But in reality, 2 weeks or 3 months from now, the situation may look different. Rather say, I am here now to talk with you, and we will look at other options in the future if you need someone to talk to and I am not available. Something that is not necessarily good in that moment is to say to someone, think about how much hurt you're going to cause the people that stays behind. We do want to reflect on the other situation, on the extended situation, for example, trying to convince them not to end their own lives because of all of the people that are going to leave behind. But we don't know what the dynamic is, and thinking about others or relevant loved ones in that person's life can even make them feel a bit more sad. And we don't necessarily know what the dynamic is between people at that moment. So we do not want to risk of exasperating the sadness thoughts at that moment. Sometimes the thoughts of others can make the depressed person feeling worse, or the depression worse, because you don't know what led to this person considering suicide. Saying there are many other options could also lead to that person at that moment feeling as if you know that there's a whole lot of other options, but for them at that moment it's very, very difficult to look at any alternatives. Rather say something along the lines of, I can hear that this feels like the only option you have left. How about we discuss the other options you also considered together. Make it a team effort. Then additionally, it's also important that we don't treat suicide as a sin or involve religion at all, because suicide does have a religious components. But it's important that we don't try to convince the person to get them out of the suicidal ideation by involving religion or saying that it's a sin, because it could even make them feel more worse for having the suicidal ideation. Rather talk about suicide openly. Don't avoid it. Be direct when you ask questions about it. Bianca also mentioned earlier that it's sometimes a topic that we do want to steer clear from, or that we are afraid if we talk about it, it could make that person think about it even more. But it isn't the case. Research indicates that we need to talk about suicide openly. We need to ask someone if they give the inclination that they consider not being ill, that they do have thoughts about ending everything. Ask them, have you considered suicide? Is this something that you would want to do? Talk about suicide openly and not steer clear from the topic at all. Thank you so much. Donald?
Thank you, Karen. Students, whenever you feel that you need someone to talk to, or whenever you feel that you are at the edge of suicide ideation, know that our doors are always open for you at Student Counseling Development. As Mafikeng campus, our office hours are from 8 a.m. in the morning up until 4:30 p.m. And our contact details are 018-389-2592. Or you can reach us on our emergency number, which is 018-389-2167, which is the control room. Or you can send us an email at mc-scd@nwu.ac.za. For more information and for more bookings, you can go online and book for a session on Ifundi, of which Bianca will cover more on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donald. And this is also the same on the Potchefstroom campus. You will see that we are also available the same hours. There's counselors and psychologists available to assist. You will see the contact details. There is the number 018-299-1777. That number is also available after hours if you are experiencing a psychological crisis or emotional crisis, or if you do have these thoughts of suicide, or you hear of a friend that has these thoughts, please contact us any time of the day or night. And then the email address, if you are a Potchefstroom student, NWU student, scdpotch@nwu.ac.za. Thank you, Bianca.
On Van der Beltpark campus, we have the 24-hour TUSO crisis line. This is for any psychological crisis that you might be facing. The contact number there is 082-815-9781. We also have our walk-in office hours, which is from 8 till 4:30 Monday to Friday. The office number is 016-910-3195. And then, as Donald mentioned, alternatively, you can book sessions via Ufundi on the Ufundi platform. And you can also visit our Facebook page for more information on how to get in contact with us. So on the Ufundi Facebook page, it's important to visit the SCD site. After you've selected your campus, you complete the steps to make the booking. But there is also more information for additional support. There you can find national helplines and other support, or topic-specific information on mental health, but also support during the COVID-19 pandemic. So thank you all for joining us today and availing yourself to listen to such an important topic. If you have any questions, or you or a friend need assistance, please don't hesitate to come into contact with Student Counseling Development on your campus. So from Karen, Donald, and myself, we thank you for your time.